Welcome to The Last 50 Feet, the podcast about what happens when autonomous vehicles actually arrive at the curb. Every week, we get into what is moving in autonomous commerce, what's stalling, and who's building what next. No fluff, all signal, and we keep it brief. That's our thing. Let's get into it.
Happy Thursday morning from south of the 37th parallel.
That's incorrect.
We're not south of the 37th
Absolutely
parallel
not.
here in Palo Alto. Are you
learning?
serious? Yeah, there you go. Quiet down, boy. I am Cam Hering, head of sales. This is, what's your name?
My name is Ben Seidl.
What do you do here?
I'm the CEO, comma.
Can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
So Uber earnings was yesterday or day before. The company did a record 3.2 billion rides in Q1. No, it's 3.6. So 1.2 billion rides a month. Market cap of roughly $160 billion as of recording. Waymo raised 16 billion at 125 billion valuation less than 90 days ago. They're doing 2 million rides a month. There is a relatively tight gap between two of those numbers and a very, very wide gap between the other two. Can you walk me through why that might be?
What do you think?
I mean, I think we understand that the promise of eventually removing the driver leads to massive growth at scale. But we are not yet at that point, and those numbers seem to be relatively close, given that's the case.
I mean, looking at a stock price is never a very good indication of reality, of course. So what I would say is what I think most that common phrase about stock prices, which is that in the short term it's a voting mechanism, in the long term it's a weighing mechanism. So of course right now autonomous vehicle technology is all of the buzz, and for good reason. And I think Waymo is very clearly the leader in that industry, bar none. If you were to then do that same analysis of between Waymo and who else? Tesla Robotaxi, I guess, is the only other comp, and they have 38 unsupervised vehicles. I think you'd see a similar gap. So I suppose my answer is that valuation is based on what people are voting that the future will look like. And when Waymo goes public someday, or if maybe it stays private forever, I think when you look back on this in 5 years, the stock price will absolutely validate who's the winner. But I think for now it's mostly just hype, of course. But if I were to guess, I think that the valuation comps between Uber and Waymo are fair. I'd invest in Waymo at 160 if I had any money. I'd also invest in Uber at 160, and so I actually like it. I understand that the data shows that Uber is a massive company, but if you want to look at the autonomous vehicle market, which you should, because autonomous vehicle market is going to be the only market, then Uber's not in a very good spot. Like they're in a pretty challenging position. And
do you think that so initially Waymo and Uber had a bit tighter of a relationship, but as Waymo has rolled out in new cities, they have not engaged with Uber?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I was having this conversation about this yesterday, explaining the industry as it stands today to somebody, and from my vantage point, I think there are three players, very clear players, that have carved out corners of this market. And those three players are Waymo, Uber, and Tesla. And Uber has a partnership strategy where they select all the other autonomous vehicle companies in the world outside of Waymo and Tesla to invest in, to support, to grow with over the years to come. And I think that strategy has some potential upside, and also, of course, also has a lot of risk. And so the early days, you saw Uber and Waymo working together. They launched Atlanta together last year. They launched Austin together also last year. And since those two markets, there have been no further Uber Waymo partnerships. So since then, I want to say that there's been 6 new cities or more, maybe, that don't include Waymo.
Maybe 8,
I'm
actually.
sorry, that don't include Uber. We're talking about Miami launched without Uber, Nashville's launching without Uber, Orlando launched without Uber,
Houston, San Antonio.
So it certainly looks like that partnership is on ice for now. And I think it remains to be seen whether those two come back together at some point in the future or not. But what looked like last year to be a really strong partnership between Waymo and Uber, now this year seems to be not the future for either of those companies as a strong relationship. So really interesting development. I think most of the market last year assumed that Waymo and Uber would be tight partners, as they had been in Austin and Atlanta. And now it's very clear that that won't be the case. So what should that do to Waymo's valuation if Waymo can continue scaling without Uber and prove that it can generate its own demand? Well, their valuation should, of course, go way up. What should Uber's valuation do based on that news? Well, I think, in my opinion, it should be downward pressure. So it's pretty fascinating to, I think, watch a third camp now develop. And I guess we'll see how that relationship moves over the next 6 to 12 months, but definitely fascinating development for the AV industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about, as you have the rest of the upstarts, where that demand will all aggregate, and if there will be one-off single points of demand, or if it will aggregate on the platforms. Can you walk through what happened last week involving Hertz?
Oh yeah, I think that was really fascinating too. But I think before we talk about that, I would say one, maybe the most important aspect of the Waymo Uber relationship is the actual product and service integration between those two for the customer. For all of us who aren't involved in those companies, if you want a Waymo in Austin or Atlanta, you have to call it through an Uber, through the Uber app. You can't elect for a Waymo to come to get you in Atlanta or Austin. You randomly get paired with a Waymo. And for those of us autonomous vehicle enthusiasts, and I would much rather ride in an autonomous vehicle if I have the choice, given it's a similar price point. I want to choose that. And if I can't, when I travel to Atlanta and Austin, then I can't guarantee that I'm going to get an autonomous vehicle. It's just a frustrating consumer process. And I think it's suboptimal for both companies. I want a Waymo. I should be able to get a Waymo. If Uber doesn't want to guarantee that I can get a Waymo for competitive reasons, that just sucks for the consumer. So ultimately, I think that probably has a lot to do with it as well, is that they've, I'm sure, got enough data and had the conversations to say, we need to make an autonomous vehicle button in Austin and Atlanta that can allow someone to definitively choose an autonomous vehicle or not. But if you're not going to
The
make
button.
if you're not going to make that button, if you're not going to allow an Uber rider to expressly request an AV, then what are we doing here? And it's I'm not the only one that feels that way. I think everybody else in the AV industry who takes a lot of these types of robotaxis feels that exact same way about the Uber app with Waymo. So my guess is it's twofold. It's a competitive, strategic business decision about where those two companies are going in the future, but also a present day product conflict where I don't think the two companies probably see eye to eye. Similar stuff is also happening on the fleet management side of the house too. And so to your point, Uber announced last week that they were going to be, was it this week, partnering with Hertz for fleet management kind of at scale for these new Lucid and Neuro robotaxis that are going to be coming out towards the end of this year and early next year. And that was pretty big news, I think, for a bunch of reasons, but it's another indicator that Uber is taking this partnerships approach to try and solve all these distinct problems when it comes to operating robotaxis at scale. Excuse me. And again, it remains to be seen. Waymo has a partner in Move, who they work very tightly with. They launched in Miami together. So Move AV operates all of the Waymos in Miami, all of the Waymos in Phoenix. They have their depots, they're charging, they're cleaning. And so Waymo's entire, let's just call it supply chain for getting these cars into the markets to operate them is very clean. Waymo gets the cars produced by Hyundai or Zeekr. They put them into the fleet via Move. Move takes care of them. A rider requests it through the Waymo app. There's only 3 companies in that chain. But for Uber, you're talking that they think of it in a very different way, which is to say they'll rely on dozens of partners and not really commit to any of them as standard. And if it were me, I mean, that just sounds very complicated, and I don't think that's going to lead to a easy to operate robotaxi service. So TBD on the results of that compared to kind of Waymo's streamlined supply chain and operations processes versus Uber will work with, I think they're working with Avis in Dallas. Now they're going to do some Hertz stuff. So obviously, you've got conflict between that announcement. You're doing in the same state of Texas, you're doing significant partnerships with Hertz and Avis. Those two companies are trying to find a path forward for themselves with AVs, and they're not being guaranteed anything by Uber. And then there's other players within the Uber
fleet management.
Yeah, they actually invested in Move AV, and they've got other partners as well. So, really interesting continual moves from them to I suppose spread the risk evenly across a ton of providers and just see what shakes out. But certainly more complicated.
It's extremely complicated. One might say Uber hurts Lucid Neuro. Or would you say that Lucid Neuro hurts Uber? It's got to be the other way around.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? It's definitely going to be an exciting 6 to 9 months here as Uber enters the fray with the Lucid and Neuro vehicles. But yeah, I don't know. I very much think that that's going to be tough. If you look what Tesla is doing, everything is in-house. It's even more streamlined than what Waymo is doing, which Tesla makes these robotaxis, operates the robotaxis, insures them, and provides the robotaxi app all themselves. And that's going to be hard to compete with economically. I just don't. I don't know how a disintermediated supply chain for this kind of stuff is going to outperform a vertically integrated robotaxi service from end to end. Design them, make them, finance them, put them into the fleet, maintain the fleet yourself, serve up the service. The whole 9 yards is being done by one company when it comes to Tesla. And I have to believe that that's absolutely optimal and will eventually show in the results as robotaxi starts scaling for Tesla. I think you're going to see that that's ultimately going to be the cheapest service on a cost per mile basis because of the vertical integration and the production capacity that Tesla has. But also, I think you're going to see it in the quality and the service level, because again, like, you got just one company managing that from end to end. They should, as long as they take it seriously enough, that should result in a much better product experience, not just a cost, but it should be higher uptime, cleaner cars, more organized system, just the whole 9 yards, because they can watch that process all the way through its operation, as opposed to relying on 30 partners in a patchwork system across, like Uber is doing in different cities. And but I guess we'll see.
I mean, as a counterpoint though, do you think that maybe vertically integrating and Tesla doing this all themselves is what is slowing their rollout in the first place? Do you think that the partnerships that Uber's utilizing help get them to scale a little bit quicker?
Yeah, I think that's a fair counterpoint. But again, getting to scale quicker doesn't answer the two things I mentioned, which I think are ultimately what's going to matter. What's the price?
And is it a better experience?
And what's the quality of the service?
100%.
Whoever is going to win on both those fronts, if you can win on both those at the same time, you're going to be the winner of the robotaxi space. So Waymo is obviously the scaled winner by far right now, but that doesn't mean that Waymo is going to win the space for the next 5 years. And if Uber sprints to scale, their service next year, that also does not mean that they're going to win the long-term robotaxi race. So I think Tesla's rightly being patient and getting all of these components dialed in so that they can push their cars to scale whenever they so choose. But every single component of that must be synced, it must be tested, it must be ready for prime time before they can, put a bunch of cars into the service. So this is a 20 to 30 year game. It's actually probably an infinite game. I don't think we're going backwards to human-driven vehicles. So if this is the only game, I agree with Tesla's approach of just being patient, even if investors are upset by that. So be it. This is the only game that's left in transportation, so you better get it right. And just trying to appease Wall Street like Uber's doing, I think, to get into the game and rush all this stuff over the finish line with suboptimal components. It might work for next year, it might work for the year after, but I think at some point, again, the price and the quality is what consumers are going to judge the robotaxi services on, and that's all that's going to matter.
Yesterday's price is not today's price. With that, folks, I would say that is the pod for Ben Seidl, CEO, and myself, Cam Hering, head of sales. Have a great rest of your week.